All right. So yes, hello everyone, and welcome to the May edition of the Global Chamber AI Globinar series. I'm Jacob Dietz, founder of Climo Collective, and I'm very grateful to see everyone and glad that you're joining us from, as we were talking about, all across the world. Usually this is the part where we, monologue a little bit, introduce our guest speakers, tee up the discussion, and sort of fade into the facilitative background. But not today. Today we're doing something a little bit different.
Yeah, that's right. My name is Yuka Nakasone. I'm the executive director of Global Chamber Madrid, Barcelona, Valencia, and Malaga, uh, which means in Spain. Jacob and I usually stay behind the curtain, as he said, guiding this conversation. But today we are flipping the formats and stepping into the spotlight ourselves. We're sorry, but not so sorry. Not because we think we've got all the answers, but because we really think that it's very important to explore the human side of this AI hype and everything about AI, because we usually talk about prompts, productivity, technology, but what about valued context relationships and people shaping what comes next in the future, right?
Yeah, exactly, Yuka. And so sort of this idea, for this conversation came really from like simple reflection. We both spend a lot of time talking about AI and using it in our work, but what does that actually look like behind the scenes? I think if we're talking about, more accessibility, getting more people to use this technology, I think that it's important to look behind the curtain, sort of see how different people are using it and um really enhancing the human experience. And so, how do we each lead, design, and experiment with AI in ways that feel real? And so, this isn't just like another panel with preset answers. Think of it more of like a jam session, a dialogue between Yuka and I that, two professionals in very different AI spaces, me sort of across the spectrum, but focusing more mainly on global mental health, systems change, and ecosystem design, and Yuka in global operations, localization, and digital transformation. So think of this less like a lecture and more like a podcast you're invited into.
Wow, lecture. A little bit of, yeah, but before we dive in, a quick note for those who are joining us for the first time, a little bit about Global Chamber. The Global Chamber is one of the world's most unique and purpose-driven business networks. We are active in 525 cities and growing, creating daily communication between CEOs, investors, entrepreneurs, leaders in every major market to simplify global business and amplify impact. That's our mission. We work across sectors, industries, and regions. And now with our AI cities, we are making sure members stays at the frontier of what's next.
Yeah, exactly. And it's still wild thinking that we're about a year and a half into this AI series. But yeah, so and I'll add this, what makes Global Chambers so powerful for me especially just isn't the reach. Accessibility is great, but it's the relationships. And that's, something I felt the first experience I had nearly 2 years ago. Um, this is a community where you can be introduced to a trusted partner in Nairobi one day and a potential investor in Singapore the next. And more than that, it's a community of professionals who are leaning into transformation, asking real questions about how to grow, trade, and lead more effectively in a rapidly changing world. And that's why AI is such a natural fit for this series, because at its core, AI is not just about automation, it's about amplification. It's about how we do what we do better, smarter, and more humanely.
Yeah, so let's talk about today's theme, which is the human behind the prompt. AI is moving really fast. Every day there's a new tool, a new update, a new disruption. But behind every powerful model, is a person prompting it. We're talking about generative AI when we say prompting it. Let's be clear. AI is not just generative AI. It can be machine learning types. So we are not really focusing on generative AI, but we talk a lot about generative AI. That's the reason why we are saying this. And behind every workflow is a why, the purpose. And behind every AI output is a human intent, conscious or not. When you use AI, you know why you're using and what you want to get, right? So that's what we are going to talk about. And as somebody who worked across cultures, languages, and sectors for over 30 years, I've seen how technology can either create bridges or widen gaps. That's for sure. And AI is no difference. It reflects the inputs, systems, and mindset we feed it. And it's really amplify the human behind the tool, right? And if we don't approach it with cultural intelligence, emotional sensitivities, and ethical grounding, it risks really amplifying misunderstanding instead of connection. And I often say global product without global empathy is a local product wearing a disguise. And um, you really needs to be mindful about global audience. And this generative AI is because this is democratized, many people can use. This is really important because a user doesn't know maybe the data they are using has kind of um, unbalanced view. Perspective is a little bit, I don't know how to say it. It's not really everything included. So you really need to be mindful about if we use AI, we we need to be really mindful about what we produce and really check it, please. And in localization, we used to ask, who is this for? What does it mean in this context, different context? How will this land in another language or another market, another life experience, another culture? And these are the exact questions we should be asking about AI. I mean, when we use AI. And because this is not just a tech revolution, it's a kind of relationship revolution. It's really has a deep impact in our relationships. It's about how we communicate, how we collaborate, and how we design tools that honor difference while enabling shared value. It's a little difficult maybe to understand, but what we are saying is we need to use this to bridge the gap, how we enhance the collaboration and really respect other people when we produce something. It's not about us, but about what we produce. This is what we are talking about. And that because that's the reason why Jacob and I both care deeply about designing with values, not just features. We are both connectors at heart. Maybe people know. And when used with thoughtfulness, AI is a connector too. And let's expect that Global Chamber will develop kind of AI that we can connect people as well, right, Jacob?
Yeah, no, and that's something that we shared last week or last month in our AI series is the exciting tools that Global Chamber is working on, and we wanted to bring that not specifically the Global Chamber tools, but just this conversation about just that about relationships and how looking at AI through a different lens, how it can enhance your human experience. And yes, AI is about scale. It can increase speed, reduce costs, and do things that used to feel impossible. I
Mm,
think of that every day. But without intentionality, it can just as easily increase the noise. And in the 2.5 years, and so I'm a lot of my experience has been since really generative AI came on the scene in fall of 2022. And in the 2.5 years that I've been using technology like ChatGPT, from time to time, it's like felt like living next to a frat house. It's super, super loud because there's so much that you can do. And that's also why, we're bringing human stories to the table because at the end of the day, AI isn't just the innovation. The innovation is in how we use it.
mm. Yeah, this is an innovation that is like steam power that we brought in the last in industry revolution, right? I think this is a big enough innovation and it will innovate our life. I mean, how we use it, like exactly what you said. Like the electricity was used just for light, right? But it could be used for machines to run. This is exactly what we're saying. And as somebody who worked as at the intersection of culture and tech and global expansion, like businesses or um, even people expanding internationally, I've seen firsthand how technology either divide or connect these people, culture, or businesses, depending on how we design the experience, right? How we design, not features, experience, like user experience. Um, and what Jacob and I both care deeply about designing with values, not just features, like I said. Um, An AI, when we use wisely, is a connector too. And this is what exactly we believe, right?
Yeah, and I mean, it's been something that when I've started to use technology like generative AI, ChatGPT, it really enhanced my ability to connect, not only to connect with people, but also to sort of see the connections and see the alignment. Um, And I'll add just like one more layer, and then we'll be getting into the jam session. But for me, a lot of like currently, a lot of my AI work is mental health and impact ecosystems.
Mm,
I'm currently working with, and I'll put the link in the chat, Global Mental Health Task Force. And one of the aspects of this work is on how AI can democratize access to care, empower under-resourced organizations, and scale knowledge across borders, which is powerful. But
mm,
I've also seen how it can become performative, used for show and not for substance. I'll bring up my first uh, really. I was out in the Bay Area in February of 2023, And after a generative AI music demo, I was talking to this guy who had been in the Valley for maybe, since the 70s. And he looked at me, he's like, this is what we just watched. This is just a toy. And I agreed, not, I didn't have a strong tech background or a strong opinion either way, but how I've always seen the value is how it can be improved, how it can improve systems, like specifically looking at the education system. And that conversation, we talked about the legal system. And there's so much value it can bring, and how you can look at data and look at data that is you're doing with your values in mind and cultural context. So today's conversation is a chance to go a little deeper, to reflect not just on what AI can do, but on what it means to us, to our teams, and to our missions.
Mm. So with that, let's get into it, right?
Yeah.
Um, I like to start with a question to you, Jacob. Um, with so many global connections, how do you ensure you're not just growing networks, but growing trust? Trusts, not
Yeah.
just networks,
You
but
know, I
trust.
if if you've met me already, or if you haven't, either way, for me it's like networks are it's one of the most important spaces, and I see so much value in networks like Global Chamber and other networks that I'm a part of. And one thing, and I'll speak about me personally, uh, you know, especially with the work that I'm doing, whether it's looking at fundraising, looking at impact, looking at strategy, you know, you have to always be thinking about alignment. You have to always be thinking about, shared values and working together and working, collaboratively. And so like context is extremely important. And without context, a connection is just a contact. I think that, and one thing that has sort of shifted how I approach, and AI is generative AI has helped me sort of understand this at a deeper level, is you know transactional relation or transactional conversations, especially intro calls. I think if we're there's a lot of work that we need to do, especially in the mental health space. And if you start sort of from that foundation, uh, it I believe it's really not conducive for a lot of impact work. And for me, trust always starts with listening. I say this, and I've said this a lot recently, is like I lead with curiosity. For me, it's understanding someone's rhythm and reality before trying to add value. I want to hear stories. I want to connect. Doesn't always have to be at a super deep level, but I want to know this. I want to know about the person first and who they are. And one thing and this is something I really value about Global Chamber, it's a true, from my first experience here. I felt, the warmth, and specifically around like warm introductions. Um, and I took a lot of lessons from that, from Doug and Cesar and others. Is you know, a network is more than just a collection of people. And as I'm a connector, the idea of just having someone in my network that either there isn't some path forward, isn't a way to connect and amplify their work. It becomes just sort of like a contact. I some of my best intros come from weaving others together and not inserting myself into the middle.
Mm.
And one of the things that I love about AI is like specifically in like mapping ecosystems. Collective impact is something that's really important to me. If you're looking at, nonprofits in a certain region, uh, if they're all helping the same communities, if they're all, you know, they, if they're helping the same people, they shouldn't be competing against each other for limited resources. They should be collaborating. And a lot of times with leaders, especially nonprofit leaders, uh, it's so hard to lift your head above the surface, and see. Even harder to look from above and sort of see what all is out there. And so, I've used generative AI to help map ecosystems. But what's important for me is always the human touch. Um, you know, I've always seen, you know, conversations like, having ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. I see it as a partnership, but it's a starting point. And if you can start a conversation, um, with an understanding of what's out there, and connections and possible ways to add value to their work or add value to each other's efforts, I, it's where trust begins, and where trust, really roots into the ground. And I think that's been something I've seen. Somebody said, it's been a good few weeks for me. Not somebody said that, but and as a lot of people who know me, it's sort of like my approach might look like a snowball effect. Just sort of running down the hill. And I'd like to get this image into AI, but it's there's rhythm, and there's always ways to connect people and connect resources. um but all of this connection and all of these relationships that I've built that have a strong foundation, um are really starting to pay off, and getting into work that I love, which is at a systems wide scale. And then sort of the last comment before I'm gonna turn the mic back to Yuka, or if Yuka, if there are questions.
I
You
have
know,
questions because you're talking about mapping the ecosystem with AI. It's fantastic. Congratulations. You can do a complicated work with AI, so you're a pro. But I'm wondering that maybe it can help you to communicate as well, or it's entirely your human touch, or you use part AI to kind of brainstorm how to approach this person or whatnot.
yeah, that's a great question, and I love this topic. And I I used to I used to over I feel like I used to over prepare for a lot of things, over prepare for
Mm,
calls or presentations. Um, and in so many ways, Chat GPT and other technology like that has like allowed me to sort of chill out a little bit and focus more on the people, because you have this incredible technology that you can then go back
oh,
to and build from. And so for me, like I if it's not for all connections, but I like to go in because I like to lead. Like when I say lead with curiosity, like
mm,
I want it to be authentic. I don't want to go and do homework and read everything about this person and then be like, oh, really? That's interesting, when
oh,
I actually know that. And so
mm,
for me, it can there are certain parts where like it can add value in terms of seeing organizations that can connect or ways that you can improve, but always as like a conversation starter.
mm.
And
Okay.
then sort of jamming from there.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe you think that it's absolutely not delegatable to AI, right? I mean, no. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, and it's AI maybe eventually, and with this new update, this video update I saw, I think the Google update, you know, but still, it's like AI can't build those relationships for you and can't build those
Mm,
connections. It doesn't have, those lived experiences. It's driven by the data that is provided. And I think that seeing it as it always helps me with just a launching point,
Okay.
and then going back and being able to, you know, one of the things I love about using this technology is I have a big imagination. I'm very curious, very creative. Um, but in words and notes and data, there's some things that I might not be able to see, or it might take me a little
Mm.
bit longer to get to. And
Mhm.
so I love finding those like deeper insights that really, like, yeah, because like I want to work on big projects. I love the topic of like moonshots, and so I want to work on moonshots. And so,
Mm.
you know, what this technology it provides is like and I know I've said this several times in this series, like a safe space to test big ideas
Yeah.
and ground them in practicality and cultural context, and thinking about the whole ecosystem and how one impacts the other. I'm always bringing in lessons I learned from my days as a science teacher, and just thinking about ecosystems out in the natural world
Mm.
and thinking about applying that same mindset to the world that we live in.
Mm.
If you remove one organism or add one in or some other disruption, how is that going to impact the whole? When I get excited, I talk with my hands a lot. But yeah, I think it allows you to see um your vision to become clearer, and to see the bigger picture and see how
Mm.
your actions will or inactions will impact others.
Mm. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So Yuka, I'm going to toss the mic back over to you. And so I love earlier how, you brought up the idea of designing AI with empathy and context. It's easy to get caught up in the scale and efficiency, but you've reminded us that trust, not tech, is what actually builds bridges.
Mm.
And speaking of bridges, you're someone who stands at very unique intersection, tech, localization, and global human strategy. You're navigating a world where the tools, languages, and even expectations can change by the hour. And
Mm.
so that leads me to my question for you. Since your work
Mm.
involves both the localization of tech and the global strategy of people, how do you
Mm.
maintain clarity of purpose in such a rapidly evolving landscape? I need to get my pen and paper out and take some notes.
And this is a very interesting question because you said, how do I maintain clarity of purpose in such a rapidly evolving landscape? First of all, I talked about this clarity thing with my mentor, who is an American guy sitting in Boston. Um, he is more or less enlightened person, and he talked about what I didn't expect. Because for me, the clarity in the dark, talking about not dark room, but kind of in life we have dark moment, right? For me, clarity can be something like a dimmed light in a complete darkness. If we have some kind of tip, candlelight far away, maybe it can be a clarity to go that for that direction, right? Because if we want to go from point one to point B and not point C, we have to go to the direction including point B. Here, 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 but point B, right? So as long as we're going for that direction, even if the light is so dim, it can be a clarity. That was my kind of understanding of quality, you know. But I discussed this with my mentor, and his answer was surprising and made sense. He said, the purpose is the clarity. If you're clear about purpose, your purpose, everything becomes clear. So applying this for AI world, I think it's true as well. And we always talk about intent. When we talk about AI, intention of the user, intent is very, very important. Pressing the button A, thinking about B or thinking about Z, completely different, right? Um, so I guess I need to buy that idea. How do we maintain clarity of purpose in such a rapid evolving landscape of technology or AI? Is having our purpose of using AI clear. It's reverse. Yeah. So I think what we are talking about today is really important because many people are a little confused because everybody is talking about AI. So they kind of think like we need we need to use AI. So what shall we do? Oh, just doing this to, doing it rapidly or creating something that is amazing. But sometimes we are forgetting about the purpose. And for me, for example, I'm using AI, Gen AI, in my work in different contexts, like you said, different contexts. When I'm, for example, writing something, from article to email to, like post, of course, I use this kind of AI, Gen AI, because my purpose is correctly and clearly communicate what I want to say in a grammatically correct and stylish or elegant, maybe elegant. Well, that's my purpose of using this kind of AI, right? In this context. And if I'm implementing AI for my client, the purpose may be different, but there's a purpose of implementing this AI, and we can't flip it. I mean, this was said very beautiful by Steve Jobs. We need to always come back from the client's needs and reverse engineer from there what we do with technology. It's not that we have this technology, at Apple, we have this and this and this and this and this and this technology, so we can do this feature, that feature, blah, blah, blah. That's why we can create a great product to, offer, and we are going to find the users. And that's kind of everybody's doing, but it's reverse. Steve Jobs said it very beautiful. I watched this video over and over and over again to remind me to really do things purposefully. And we have to think why we are doing this, why we are implementing this AI in this way, what the user needs, what the clients need. And then I need to calculate and reverse engineer from there to So what shall I do? This or that, right? So that's the answer to your question. I
Mm,
hope I answered your question well.
beautifully. I think that, I was at the last when you were closing that thought, I was thinking a lot about, the I feel like we're moving slightly away from it. Like there will never be like a total end to it. But I think, this era of immediate satisfaction is clearly not sustainable. And I think that,
Mhm.
uh, one way to what this technology can really do is, there are a lot of things that as people, as in professionals, leaders, whatever, there's a lot of things that we need to unlearn. And I think that sometimes having these conversations uh, in a space where like you can learn it your own way or unlearn it your own way. I think that it goes back to, the idea of like if, you know, if the best atmosphere and environment for learning is a safe environment. Been like that since the test of time and education. And um, I think that if without, not only that, but it's like also you can help, if you're a little iffy about what your purpose is, it can sort of guide you and be that sort of dim light that helps to guide you and provide more clarity. Um, One thing that I say to myself about clarity all the time is clarity is kindness,
Mm.
big time. And so uh, I love that. And so I always want to make sure that we whether it's somebody presenting their organization, their platform, um, I want to think about you know how people can actually use this technology, especially global chamber members and others, and what I think that really helps to create a good conversation about using that is like talking about things that excite you or things that surprised you, whether positively or negatively. And so, I have one myself that I'm has was a lot of things have surprised me with this technology. But Yuka, I want to start with you. Can you share a moment where, AI, generative or not, has surprised you in a positive or negative way?
Well, um, good question. I've I've been always curious like yourself. So I'm always testing new things. And actually this GPT thing, I had the access to GPT 2.0, I think, before GPT went public with ChatGPT. And and because I was working for AI company at that moment in the pandemic, I kind of knew this was coming. And but it was very primitive, when I tested Gen AI, the primitive version without going public or democratized. And when they launched this Chat GPT, I straight away went to test it. And there's an article about my test, and I was pleasantly surprised that maybe translation-based localization will be over soon. That was my prediction when I saw this Gen AI. I mean, when it went public, um, so that was a surprise. And maybe when I started to write and started to write reports with all the evidence, all the sources aligned, um, I could do a great job in a friction of time. So that was my surprise recently. Like I use Perplexity to do the kind of um, more rigid report type of writing, and it does a kind of great job. And while I'm implementing a pilot system for a university, it was another surprise that it's really complex. If we want to make something great at the academic level, to make it um, let's say useful for all the types of users like researcher, teachers, students, administrative staffs, and general public, we need to make sure all the pipelines to be created. And because of type of the things they are doing, like if we talk about um, academic things, like one general term can be a very specific technical term in the world. So make sure to make AI understand that kind of thing, depending on the sector, vertical, or narrower context. It's a challenge. That's my surprise as
Mm,
well.
yeah, I think, and it's I will always, there are a lot of things that aren't so positive. But I always like to frame things in a positive way, and it surprises me in a lot of ways. And one way that I think that is positive at a grander level is that elicits the feeling of awe and wonder. And I feel like
Mm,
that's something that is not as prevalent anymore.
mm,
It's something that this technology has enhanced my ability, enhanced my creativity and curiosity. And I think that's something that's really interesting, is like the creativity piece. But like one
mm,
of the most valuable ways, and this surprised the heck out of me, is like when I remember when Claude was the first one that you could upload files to, and I was like, oh, this is cool. This was back in um, uh, sometime in like 2023, like maybe later in 2023. And so like I'd been doing a lot of networking. This was post global chamber membership, and so I was starting to touch on a lot of different sectors outside of nonprofits, civil society organizations. I was hitting the whole gambit, and so like I was curious, like what that network looked like. What were some
mm,
insights I could gain from that. Uh, where are the gaps? Yeah, what are some things that I might not be seeing? And so my curiosity has driven me in most things, with almost everything with this technology. Um,
mm,
and so I took my LinkedIn data, no names, but just the organizations, uh, positions, and the date. We
mm,
connected in location and uploaded that file to get
mm,
what I called a networking portfolio. And
mm.
it was so cool. Like it was like, wow, like so I have 12% in tech. I have
Oh, that's
8%
cool.
in civil society, and
Mm,
showing me where those gaps are, showing me possible ways that I can, fill in those gaps? What are
Mm,
ways to strengthen my network? And that helped me really also see the value of, you know, of networking, but also like networking with intention. And
mm,
so it adds that context that I think is valuable.
mm,
I love networking just to network, but now with how fast things are moving and how important time is, like I want to make sure that that things are driving forward, and um, that exercise really like showed a lot, and like it
mm,
gave me kind of, but it also like drove me to be like, okay, man, I need to fill these gaps. I need to make a truly like across every sector network, because
mm,
to me, working in systems, all parts of those systems have to be talking to each other, and
mm,
not every day, but there has to be knowledge of what impacts, how those different parts of the system are impacted by each other. And I think it's driven me to create those connections um even more. And so
mm.
that's something, and happy to share that with anyone, the
Mm.
networking portfolio concept. But yeah, it's just
Oh, yeah, great.
data. What you can do with data has I
Mm,
think really surprised me. Personal data,
yeah.
and like just
Mm,
things that also you need to make sure protect the data and safety and
yeah.
and ethics. But yeah, no, that the networking portfolio is something that has stood out of my AI
Mhm.
experience, and still stands out.
Wow. Thank you. So why not opening up the floor to the people who are here, because we have 10 minutes to think. So is anybody wants to say something, please?
Yeah, are there any questions, or anyone want to share some of the things that like what surprised them or is exciting them? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Any
Charles.
comments?
Um, I love the insight of the conversation, and I've been thinking lately, and I'd love you to comment and tell me it's not a question, it's more a, what does the future look like? I don't know if you would agree that we're probably the last generation in human existence that will have the predominant derive will be human with an AI assisted component. In other words, I call that integrated AI. So right now, integrated AI, you could put a percentage on it, but we're still in control, right? We go to ChatGPT, it gives us an answer, we put it in Word, we wordsmith it, and then we put it in a LinkedIn post, and then we fire it off. All of that is human driven. I'm the person doing the driving. I think, and this is my future kind of question in my mind, is that people born today will not be doing that. When they get old enough to be integrated with AI, which will probably be younger and younger and younger, like there'll be no humans on TV, there'll be no humans in anything written, there'll be very few authentic 100% human. What does that look like? And I don't mean it to be dystopian. It's more like an open question, because I like to be optimistic. Maybe there's a great opportunity in there that we can position for ourselves. But and then I'll stop. I see the trajectory going in that direction, and in my mind, it's unstoppable. Right? We can't stop this. So the question is, do we try to resist it? Do we embrace it? Do we accelerate it? Do we try to slow it down? That's kind of like my bigger thought. And I hope this fits into the topic today.
Yuka, with your experience with this technology, I have my thoughts, but they're more like hypothetical, probably. But what do you think? That's a great question, Charles. I'm right,
Yeah,
Mario.
it's a very good question. Somebody said that what's going on, we can't stop, right? I mean, they tried. Somebody, I mean, if you think about it, some people screamed at us and signing a document at the first stage of this evolution or revolution to stop progressing so fast. But I don't think they succeeded, and I don't think we can stop this happening ever. The question Charles asked was how it looks like and how authentic humans are going to be. I don't have any idea. I guess more and more we're going to be like robots powered, robotic AI powered human.
Well, Yuka, if
I
I
don't
could
know.
just clarify my point, because
Yeah,
I think you were going down the path, and I want others to weigh in really quickly, but it's almost like your response kind of crystallized my question, which is right now, AI is fitting into a human world. But what I think is unstoppable is that human beings born today, like this isn't 100 years from now, this is happening today, will be born into an AI world. And so it's a complete flip. We are going to have to fit into an AI world. And I guess my question is, what is the purpose of a human being in that world?
I'd love to answer this, but I'd also love to, if anybody else from the
yeah,
audience would like to weigh in.
please.
Um, and what are some thoughts on this? Because yeah, it's a really great question. And feel
Nobody?
free to come off mute. Doug, any thoughts on this topic?
Charles has accomplished scaring the hell out of me. It's
Yeah.
a good it's a good thought. It goes back to isn't this the topic of that AI is going to control everything and there's no jobs left, and and we end up sitting around eating cherries while all this stuff is happening and money is being created. So is that what our future's about? I think I don't know, Charles. It seems like that's far off in the future, but it's probably sooner than we think.
I think it's going to happen in our lifetime. And I think I want to just be clear, Doug, because I recognize the fear. It's not in any way meant to be fearful. And I could see how you could go one way or the other, right? You could see this on one side as a terrible thing, or on the other side as a beautiful thing. And I think one thing maybe we as human beings possess right now that the AI doesn't, and maybe never will, is we can define purpose and context. And so, and we can ask questions that are more philosophical than an AI can, at least today. And that is, what is it to be a human being today? What is it to be a professional? What is it to be anything in this current environment versus what's changing, that's going to change our world dramatically in the next few years, which is the AI. So I just wanted to clarify, Doug, that I see it. I'd like us to think of it as a positive versus a negative.
Yeah, the positive for me is, and as I've always felt, is that this is hugely positive because ultimately, what is the purpose of people on Earth? It should be to have positive impact and save the Earth and solve problems. And what AI does is all of that. And so I just don't see a problem with whether the news is delivered by robots or whatever. It allows more people to focus in on why we're here. It's not to eat cherries and drink wine, although that's not a bad thing. It's to solve all of the problems that we're creating here and maybe in the rest of the universe. And so I think it's an amazingly great thing, for technology to be here. But that's just my thought. I know we're at the top of the hour, so
Yeah.
No,
so
I love
great
that.
question, and thank you both, Yuka and Jacob, for an amazing conversation and just being really just transparent and real and sharing, your thoughts and how you're using all of this and giving us a lot to think about today.
Thank
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 you
you,
very
Doug.
much.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone else for allowing us to sort of have this space to just chat, because I think that's something that, we need to have more conversations, that, these human conversations, and how we can blend the experience, but not let it define who we are. Yeah, any final words, Yuka?
Yeah, Till is saying purpose is to live the best life that one can in the environment of the time. So he said this very beautifully, and using the purpose, the keyword for today. So with that, maybe we can close.
Yeah. Thank you,
Right?
everyone. And next month we have a great guest, and we'll be back talking about AI, and yeah, very grateful for all of y'all to be here. Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Cesar, and thank you, thank you, everyone. Charles, thank you for the great question.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. And thank you,
Yeah,
Yuka.
thank you very much. No, thank you, Jacob. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Cesar and Jim and Charles and everybody else who were here.
Have
For
a
those
great
here,
long weekend.
yes, yeah, happy
And
Memorial Day.
Oyasumi nasai.
oyasumi nasai. Talk to you later.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Bye from Japan.